This discourse tonight is on right view, or harmonious perspective. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. There the Venerable Sāriputta addressed the monks thus: Friends, monks, friend, they replied. The Venerable Sāriputta said this: one of right view is said, friends. In what way is a noble disciple one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma? Indeed, friend, we should come from far away to learn from the Venerable Sāriputta the meaning of this statement. It would be good if the Venerable Sāriputta would explain the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monks will remember it. Then, friends, listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, friend, the monks replied. The Venerable Sāriputta said this: when, friends, a noble disciple understands the unwholesome and the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of the wholesome, in that way he is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what, friends, is the unwholesome? What is the root of the unwholesome? What is the wholesome? What is the root of the wholesome? Killing living beings is unwholesome. Taking what is not given is unwholesome. Misconduct and sexual pleasures is unwholesome. False speech is unwholesome. Malicious speech is unwholesome. Harsh speech is unwholesome. Gossip is unwholesome. Covetousness is unwholesome. Ill will is unwholesome. Wrong view is unwholesome. This is called the unwholesome. And what is the root of the unwholesome? Greed is a root of the unwholesome. Hate is a root of the unwholesome. Delusion is a root of the unwholesome. This is called the root of the unwholesome. What is the wholesome? Abstention from killing living beings is wholesome. Abstention from taking what is not given is wholesome. Abstention from misconduct and sensual pleasures is wholesome. Abstention from false speech is wholesome. Abstention from malicious speech is wholesome. Abstention from harsh speech is wholesome. Abstention from gossip is wholesome. Uncovetousness is wholesome. Non-ill will is wholesome. Right view is wholesome. This is called the wholesome. And what is the root of the wholesome? Non-greed is a root of the wholesome. Non-hate is a root of the wholesome. Non-delusion is a root of the wholesome. It's kind of interesting that they talk about delusion as being unwholesome and non-delusion as being wholesome. What is delusion? Come on.
Form of ignorance.
No.
Concept of self.
Taking things personally.
Taking things personally.
A belief in the self.
Belief in a personal self.
Personal self.
So that's considered unwholesome. Anytime you take anything to be I, me, mine, You take your thoughts, you take your feelings, you take your concepts, you take your ideas, and if you identify with those as being yours personally, that is unwholesome. This is why when we practice the 6 R's, it's such an amazing system, because you're letting go of the craving. You're letting go of the start of that personality belief, or that personal belief. And when you let it go, you see everything as being part of an impersonal process. And that's wholesome. When a noble disciple has thus understood the unwholesome, the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of the wholesome, he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to lust. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion. He extirpates the underlying tendency to view and conceit I am. What does extirpate mean?
Take out. Really get rid of it.
Uproot.
That's
I
interesting.
always had a chuckle when I ran across the word extirpate. That's so bhikkhu bodhi.
Can you read the first sentence of that last part?
When a noble disciple has thus understood the unwholesome,
That's it. When he's understood, then that abolishes it. That's what I wanted to hear. When he understands it correctly, that's what abolishes it and extirpates it. That's neat.
but he extirpates the underlying tendency to view and conceit I am. And by abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way, too, a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Now we're going to talk a little bit about nutriment. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they ask him a further question, "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands nutriment, the origin of nutriment, the cessation of nutriment, and the way leading to the cessation of nutriment, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is nutriment? What is the origin of nutriment, the cessation of nutriment, and the way leading to the cessation of nutriment? There are 4 kinds of nutriment for the maintenance of beings that already have come to be, for the support of those seeking a new existence. What for? They are physical food as nutriment, gross or subtle, contact as the second, mental volition as the third, and consciousness as the fourth. With the arising of craving, there is the arising of nutriment. Now, what does that mean? When you 6R something, you've let go of the craving, that means you're not going to be feeding that mental state. And eventually that mental state will die from starvation. Right? If you don't give it food, now what's the actual food? The actual food is the clinging. Right?
But before the clinging's mind's attention, right? placed on it.
Couldn't the nutriment also be the purity of mind? The experience of the purity of mind?
On the other end. Yeah.
It kind of depends on whether craving is there or not. If there is no craving, then there is purity of mind.
Yeah, there's the,
Because there's no clinging and habitual tendency and all the other
Right.
stuff.
there's that momentary cessation of
Right.
suffering.
Right. So I guess in a way you could say that is a kind of nutriment. Because you're feeding the wholesome. Good point. With the arising of craving, there is the arising of nutriment. With the cessation of craving, there is the cessation of nutriment. The way leading to the cessation of nutriment is just this Noble Eightfold Path. That is harmonious perspective, harmonious intention, harmonious communication, harmonious action. Harmonious lifestyle, harmonious practice, harmonious observation, and harmonious collectedness. When a noble disciple has thus understood nutriment, the origin of nutriment, the cessation of nutriment, and the way leading to the cessation of nutriment, he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to greed. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion. He extirpates the underlying tendency to view and conceit I am. And by abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they asked him a further question, "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" "There might be, friend. When, friends, a noble disciple understands suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is suffering? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? Birth is suffering, aging is suffering. Sickness is suffering, death is suffering. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Not to be obtained, not to obtain what one wants is suffering. In short, the 5 aggregates affected by clinging are suffering. This is called suffering. The 5 aggregates are not necessarily suffering, but when they're affected by clinging, they are. And what is the origin of suffering? It is craving, which brings renewal of being, is accompanied by delight and lust, and delights in this and that. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, craving for non-being. This is called the origin of suffering. What is the cessation of suffering? It is the remainderless fading away and ceasing, the giving up, relinquishing, letting go, and rejection of that same craving. This is called the cessation of craving. It's amazing how in other Dhamma talks they say the same thing, isn't it? And what is the way leading to the cessation of suffering? It is just this Noble Eightfold Path. This is called the way leading to the cessation of suffering. When a noble disciple has thus understood suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and way leading to the cessation, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they ask him a further question, "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands aging and death, the origin of aging and death, the cessation of aging and death, and the way leading to the cessation of aging and death, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is aging and death? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? The aging of beings in the various orders of beings, their old age, brokenness of teeth, grayness of hair, wrinkling of skin, decline of life, weakness of faculties. This is called aging. The passing of beings out of the various orders of beings, their passing away, dissolution, disappearance, dying, completion of time, dissolution of the aggregates, laying down of the body. This is called death. So this aging and this death are what is called aging and death. With the arising of birth, there is the arising of aging and death. With the cessation of birth, there is the cessation of aging and death. The way leading to the cessation of aging and death is just this Noble Eightfold Path. When a noble disciple has thus understood aging and death, the origin, the cessation, and way leading to the cessation, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Now you notice that we're starting from aging and death and then going down to ignorance. That's kind of interesting, because this is the way to the cessation. This is how you have your right view. And this is also how you start letting go of things. When a distraction arises and you recognize that distraction, you 6R the distraction and come back to your object of meditation. If there's still attachment, then your mind goes back to that distraction. How did mind's attention do that? What happened first? What happened after that? What happened after that? What happened after that? As you become more familiar with how this process works, you start recognizing more easily when a distraction arises, and you see something that happens right before you get carried away. And you let go of that then, and then come back to your object of meditation after 6Ring it. You always have to come back to your object of meditation. That's how you improve your mindfulness. And by 6Ring the distraction, you are letting go of the craving. You're letting go of that tension and tightness, of that I am conceit that is attached to everything. When you let that go, smile, come back to your object of meditation. If you still haven't let go of that hindrance, then you simply wait until your attention is pulled back to it, and 6R it, relax, smile, come back to your object of meditation. Before long, you'll become very familiar with that process, and you'll see something that arises right before your mind would go to that distraction. So you let go again. When you see that, you 6R right then. You start having your mind spend more and more time on your object of meditation and less time on the distraction. Make this an automatic habit. Whatever arises, 6R, come back to your object of meditation. The more it turns into a habit, the more clearly you see the whole process. Okay, saying, good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they asked him a further question, but friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands birth, the origin of birth, the cessation of birth, the way leading to the cessation. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. What is birth? What is its origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? The birth of beings in the various orders of beings. Their coming to birth, precipitation in a womb, generation, manifestation of the aggregates, obtaining the basis of contact. This is called birth. When the arising of habitual tendency, with the arising of habitual tendency, there is the arising of birth. With the cessation of habitual tendency, there is the cessation of birth. The way leading to the cessation of birth is just this Noble Eightfold Path. Now, another thing that you might not have realized is when you practice the 6 R's, you are practicing the Eightfold Path. That is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Why? Because you're letting go of the craving. And you saw back here just a little bit ago that was the cause. So every time you practice the 6 R's and let go of the distraction, then you are practicing the Eightfold Path. When a noble disciple has thus understood birth, the origin of birth, the cessation of birth, and the way leading to the cessation of birth, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too a noble disciple is one of harmonious perspective and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they ask him a further question, but friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands habitual tendency, the origin of habitual tendency, the cessation of habitual tendency, and the way leading to the cessation. In that way, he is one of harmonious perspective and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is harmonious habitual tendency? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? There are these three kinds of habitual tendency. Sense sphere habitual tendency, fine material habitual tendency, and immaterial habitual tendency. So they're talking about the sense sphere, that's the human realm. The material, fine material, that is the Devalokas and the Brahma Lokas up to the fourth jhana. And the immaterial, that is the Arupa jhanas, the immaterial jhanas, and that's the last four parts of the fourth jhana. With the arising of clinging, there is the rising of habitual tendency. With the cessation of clinging, there is a cessation of habitual tendency. The way leading to the cessation is just this Noble Eightfold Path. Then when a noble disciple has thus understood habitual tendency, the origin, the cessation, and way leading to the cessation, here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way, too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they ask him a further question. You'd think that they would try to phrase it a little differently after a while, but they don't. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? And you think he might answer in a little different way, but he doesn't. There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands clinging, the origin of clinging, the cessation of clinging, and the way leading to the cessation of clinging, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. What is clinging? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? There are four kinds of clinging. Clinging to sensual pleasures, clinging to views, clinging to rules and observances, rites and rituals, clinging to the doctrine of self. With the arising of craving, there is the arising of clinging. With the cessation of craving, there is a cessation of clinging. The way leading to the cessation of clinging is just this Noble Eightfold Path. Now, did you notice how when I talk about clinging, I talk about views, opinions, concepts, stories, all of those kind of things. I don't really talk too much about rules and observations or observances, rites and rituals. Mostly because in the West we don't have a whole lot of rites and rituals, and we don't believe rites and rituals are going to take us to Nibbana. In the East, they have those beliefs. There's one form of Buddhism where they just recite a mantra over and over again, and they have the belief that when they die they will be reborn in this fantastic heavenly realm, and from there they will attain Nibbana. And all they have to do is recite this mantra over and over and over and over and over. It'd be nice if it was true. It'd be easy. Saying, "Good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they asked him a further question, but friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands craving, the origin of craving, the cessation of craving, the way leading to the cessation of craving. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. What is craving? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? There are these 6 classes of craving. Craving for forms, craving for sounds, craving for odors, craving for flavors, craving for tangibles, craving for mind objects. That pretty much sums up everything there is about craving, doesn't it? With the arising of feeling, there's the arising of craving. With the cessation of feeling, there is a cessation of craving. The way leading to the cessation of craving is just this Noble Eightfold Path. When a noble disciple has thus understood craving, the origin, the cessation, and way leading to the cessation, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way, too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So, as we progress, you're going to see more and more clearly that when you let go of one thing, then all of the rest of the things that have already been mentioned won't arise. Saying, "Good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words." Then they ask him a further question, but friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands feeling, the origin, the cessation, and way leading to the cessation of feeling, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is feeling? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? There are these 6 classes of feeling. Feeling born of eye contact, feeling born of ear contact, feeling born of nose contact, feeling born of tongue contact, feeling born of body contact, feeling born of mind contact. With the arising of contact, there is the arising of feeling. With the cessation of contact, there is the cessation of feeling. The way leading to the cessation of feeling is just this Noble Eightfold Path. When a noble disciple has thus understood feeling, the origin, the cessation, the way leading to the cessation, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way, too, a noble disciple is one of harmonious perspective and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words." When they ask him a further question, but friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands contact, the origin, the cessation, and the way leading to the cessation of contact. In that way he is one of harmonious perspective and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is contact? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? There are these 6 classes of contact. Eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact. With the arising of the sixfold base, there is the arising of contact. With the cessation of the sixfold base, there is the cessation of contact. And the way leading to the cessation of contact is just this noble eightfold path. So every time you see any one of these different links and you're able to 6R them and come back to your object of meditation, you are practicing right view and the Eightfold Path. That's why I talk about the disturbance. And the disturbances can be any sense door. It doesn't really matter, but when your mind goes to it, that's where the disturbance is, that movement of mind's attention. The more fluidly and easily you catch that mind's attention moving and let it go, the easier it is to stay with your object of meditation. Saying, "Good friend," amongst delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's word. Then they ask a further question. "But, friends, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands the sixfold base, the origin, the cessation, and the way leading to the cessation of the sixfold base, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Now you see in each one of these links how there is the Four Noble Truths. So they're very intimately intertwined with the links of dependent origination. When you fully realize the Four Noble Truths, you realize dependent origination at the same time. And what is the sixfold base? What is its origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? There are these six bases: the eye base, the ear base, the nose base, the tongue base, the body base, the mind base. With the arising of mentality, materiality, there is the arising of the sixfold base. With the cessation of mentality, materiality, there is the cessation of the sixfold base. The way leading to the cessation of the sixfold base is just this noble eightfold path. When a noble disciple has thus understood the sixfold path, the origin, cessation, and way leading to the cessation, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend," amongst delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they ask him a further question. "But, friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands mentality, materiality, the origin, the cessation, and way leading to the cessation, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is mentality, materiality? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? Feeling, perception, volition, contact, attention. These are called mentality. The four great elements and the material form derived from the four great elements, these are called materiality. The contact in the mentality is the connection between the mind and body. You got that? Contact is the connection between mind and body. Okay? So the contact is not body, but it is the connection to it. And there is the contact that we're talking about before or right after the sixfold base. And then there's the contact that we're talking about here with mentality and materiality. The first contact is more of the grosser kind of contact. And this contact here is a very subtle one.
Is that the later or the earlier? The second one you mentioned, you said.
Well, this is part of the mentality materiality. This is part of the Namarupa.
Mm-hmm.
And the different parts of the Nama, feeling, perception, volition, contact, attention. And contact is the link that holds the two, the mentality and the materiality together. After the mentality materiality, then you start going just into the mental realm. Now, one of the things that made the Buddha's teaching so amazing was when people were practicing their one-pointed absorption concentration, they got into mind and they didn't recognize body at all. They got into their absorption so deeply that their body just disappeared. And the Buddha comes along and said, there's a connection here. And when he gave us the instruction to tranquilize on the in-breath and tranquilize on the out-breath, when you relax your body, you relax your mind. When you relax your mind, you relax your body. That connection is real important. And it's what you see very clearly in your the samatha vipassana meditation, and you don't see very clearly in the absorption concentration. This is one of the reasons that it's so hard for people that are practicing absorption concentration to understand dependent origination, because of this mentality materiality link. Okay. Saying, good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they asked him a further question, but friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be. When, friends, a noble disciple understands consciousness, the origin, the cessation, and the way leading to the cessation of consciousness, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. what is consciousness, what is the origin, what is the cessation, what is the way leading to the cessation. There are these 6 classes of consciousness. Eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and mind consciousness. Now, these 6 classes, at this particular point, is the potential for them to arise. But they have to have the contact in order to arise. With the arising of formations, there is the arising of consciousness. With the cessation of formations, there is a cessation of consciousness. The way leading to the cessation of consciousness is just this Noble Eightfold Path. When a noble disciple has thus understood consciousness, the origin, the cessation, and the way leading to the cessation of consciousness, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view, and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they ask him a further question. Do you have any idea what that might be? But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands formations, the origin, the cessation, and the way leading to the cessation, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. What are formations? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? There are these 3 kinds of formations: the bodily formation, the verbal formation, the mental formation. With the arising of ignorance, there is the arising of formations. With the cessation of ignorance, there is the cessation of formations. The way leading to the cessation of formations is just this Noble Eightfold Path. When a noble disciple has thus understood formations, the origin, the cessation, the way leading to the cessation, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they ask him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands ignorance, the origin of ignorance, the cessation of ignorance, and the way leading to the cessation of ignorance, and that way is one of right view, and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is ignorance? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? Not knowing about suffering, not knowing about the origin of suffering, not knowing about the cessation of suffering, not knowing about the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called ignorance. With the arising of the taints, there is the arising of ignorance. With the cessation of the taints, there is the cessation of ignorance. The way leading to the cessation of ignorance is just this Eightfold Path. When a noble disciple has thus understood ignorance, the origin of ignorance, the cessation of ignorance, and the way leading to the cessation of ignorance, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view, and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend," The monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. When, friends, a noble disciple understands the taints, the origin of the taints, the cessation of the taints, and the way leading to the cessation of the taints. In that way he is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what are the taints? What is the origin? What is the cessation? What is the way leading to the cessation? There are these three taints: the taint of sensual desire, the taint of being, and the taint of ignorance. With the arising of ignorance there is the arising of the taints. With the cessation of ignorance there is the cessation of the taints. The way leading to the cessation of the taints is just this noble eightfold path. Now, did you catch that? Okay. Because we were just talking about ignorance. And what is the cause of ignorance is the taints. Now we're talking about the taints, and they're saying what the cause of the taints is ignorance.
What is taints?
Sensuality.
The taint of where to go?
Sensual desire.
There are three taints: the taint of sensual desire, the taint of being, and the taint of ignorance.
So that's redundant, isn't it?
That being is that habitual tendency.
Right. Ignorance is all.
Isn't that redundant because ignorance is the cause of ignorance?
Well, yeah. It is a little redundant, but he wanted to get in the taints to show you that these taints are pretty deep-seated. But the way you let go of the taints is by letting go of ignorance.
Well,
It's still a little hard to comprehend that the way of letting go of ignorance is letting go of ignorance. Because ignorance is one of the
The way
taints.
of letting go of ignorance is by letting go of the taints, and the way of letting go of the taints is by letting go of ignorance.
But ignorance is one of the taints.
Would you leave me alone?
She knows the answer.
Okay,
I'm fine,
okay,
yes,
I'll go ahead.
it's not necessary, don't tell him that.
We'll see.
The taint, ignorance, is ignoring the dependent origination.
So,
So say it that way and see what happens.
but so is ignorance.
That's an extra emphasis, isn't it?
Ignorance as the first link, but ignoring the whole process.
Well, it is the same when we are asking or hearing that of the three unwholesome evils, or the three evils. One is greed, and the other one is hate, and the last is ignorance.
No, the last is illusion.
Is what?
Delusion.
What isn't that kind of? It's delusion.
Delusion
Delusion
is
is the belief in a personal self.
Illusion.
And ignorance is not seeing the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah, that's true.
maybe that way.
So are there two kinds of ignorance?
The proximate cause of ignorance would be ignoring the noble truth, the Four Noble Truths.
Is there degrees in understanding the Four Noble Truths?
Yeah.
I think so. And they are, there is the big seeing of the Four Noble Truths, and there is the subtle seeing of the Four Noble Truths. And the subtle seeing is the realization of the Four Noble Truths. So you can see the Four Noble Truths, and you can really understand them deeply, but you haven't quite reached the realization. I guess. I'm not sure, to be quite honest, but it sounds right.
Couldn't that also be the quick recognition or the immediate recognition of the absence of the understanding of the Four Noble Truths? For they are really living with us. And the subtle aspect would be that you kind of realize we are...
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying, yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's the subtle one.
Yes.
And then there's the big one.
Well, yeah, that is written down and you repeat and you talk about it. Oh.
But you start seeing the Four Noble Truths in all of the links.
Yes.
And you see the Four Noble Truths even in the ignorance. Then you still have the taint, and that's where the realization comes.
Say that again.
You still have the taint of the ignorance, and that's when the realization comes.
Oh, the taint. Okay.
You know,
There's a taint of ignorance, and then there's ignorance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good, I don't know.
but I mean, look at the Four Noble Truths. If you were going to teach a workshop on the Four Noble Truths, or a retreat just on the Four Noble Truths, you could spend a day talking about how they're the blueprint of investigation. And they are the 4 steps for investigating, because he proves it in his suttas over and over again. Then you could spend a day talking about how they are the links. And in each one of the links, they exist in the links and why. And then you could talk about they are looked upon, as many traditions look upon them, as 4 pieces of information, but they don't know what they mean when they say that, and they can't tell you either when you ask them. What does it mean if it's 4 pieces of information?
Okay, so talk to me about the taint.
So, and then the taint of ignorance, you mean?
Yeah.
That's where the
The
realization
taint is
comes.
the ignoring. The taint is not opening your eyes and mind
But
to
you've
the
already let go of ignorance. Yeah.
It's a touch.
Not until, because it's concomitant. Like those other sections, it's concomitant. That's what it's saying, it's a concomitant.
Good friends, the monks delighted and rejoiced in Sāriputta's words. Then they asked him a further question, but friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends.
If you open your eyes.
When, friends, a noble disciple understands the taints, the origin of the taints, the cessation of the taints, and the way leading to the cessation of the taints. In that way he is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma.
So if you open
Kind of
your
the
eyes.
essence, isn't it?
Yes,
The essence
the
of
essence of it. What are the
it.
taints?
And recognizing it everywhere.
This is really subtle stuff by this
Yeah,
time, I think.
essence.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
But it's the taint. Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is, because you have the ignorance and how to let it go, and then you still have the taints that
That's
the
right.
Sāriputta is saying there might be.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're talking about the taints and how to let the taints go. And with the arising of ignorance, there is the arising of the taints. With the cessation of ignorance, there's the cessation of the taints. The way leading to the cessation of the taints is this eightfold path. When a noble disciple has thus understood the taints, the origin of the taints, the cessation and way leading to the cessation, he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to lust. Excuse me. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion. He extirpates the underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am. And by abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way, too, a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma.
So in this way, the ignorance is the I am. That was the third taint.
Restitution.
Yeah.
Is it
Well, there's
possible?
no further analysis possible. Isn't
No,
that
it
what
says
they
and
say?
by abandoning ignorance.
Is it possible for it to be ignorance and then the awareness of ignorance? Would it be more taint-like? The awareness of one's ignorance is taint-like, whereas just being completely...
Well, I think it's more the subtle level of the realization of the letting go of the ignorance.
That's a taint?
The taint is still there a little tiny bit.
Yes, yeah.
Until the fruition.
It's the awareness of ignorance. It's the awareness of one's own ignorance.
It's,
Well, it could be delusion.
Because remember the remainderless fading away and cessation of ignorance, not just the cessation of ignorance. You have to have the remainderless fading away and
Yes.
cessation. So that's why it's like in essence, the essence is sitting there and can cause problems, the taint, you see. Yeah, I know, I can't.
Perhaps taint is not actionable.
Seems like
whereas
he's saying-
ignorance is actionable. Perhaps taint doesn't carry as much karma.
So the Arhat would recognize that taint in us.
yes.
That is recognizable. So he had probably the final.
Well, I think the Buddha would recognize it. I don't know if the Arahats would be able to recognize the taint or not,
Ah,
because it's really subtle stuff.
yeah.
And there are suttas where people that they claim that they have done everything that they had to do, and they go to the Buddha and he gives them a discourse on what needs to be done.
Yeah,
Taint easy.
that is hard.
It's interesting because it says it's the underlying tendency that is greed, anger, and delusion, and ignorance.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that goes together.
so that's what the taints. So it's the greed, anger, and delusion, your defilements, and ignorance, which is then the Four Noble Truths are the truths, and everything is they're all independent origination. It's like
Okay,
And that
okay, I see
leads
what
to
you're
your-
saying.
the subtlety.
Oh, maybe, I see. Oh.
He entirely abandons the underlying tendency. That's the taint.
Yes.
To lust, he abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion, he extirpates the underlying tendency to view and conceit I am, and by abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge, he here and now makes an end of suffering.
Yeah, it means it can.
Arousing
It's
true
really-
true knowledge is knowing how things actually work. That's what it was, yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now there's one more thing that I wanted to do tonight, and that is get a little bit into Sutta number 43, which is the greater series of questions and answers. This is extremely interesting and important. Okay. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Sawati in Jeta's Grove. Then, when it was evening, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita rose from meditation, went to the Venerable Sāriputta and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side and said to Venerable Sāriputta, one who is unwise, friend, with reference to what is this said, one who is unwise? One who does not wisely understand, that is why it is said. And what doesn't one wisely understand? What one doesn't wisely understand, this is suffering. One does not wisely understand, this is the origin of suffering. One does not wisely understand, this is the cessation of suffering. One does not wisely understand, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. One does not wisely understand, friend. That is why it is said one does not wisely, one who is unwise. Saying, good friend, the Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sāriputta's words. Then he asked him a further question. Now, Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita and Sāriputta were monks that were arahats at this time. One who is wise is said. With reference to what was this said? One who is wise. One wisely understands, friend. That is why it is said one who is wise. What does one wisely understand? One wisely understands this is suffering. One wisely understands this is the origin of suffering. One wisely understands this is a cessation of suffering. One wisely understands this is a way leading to the cessation. One wisely understands, friend. That is why it is said one who is wise. Now we're going to get to it. Consciousness is said, friend. With reference to what is consciousness said, it cognizes, friend. That is why consciousness is said. What does it cognize? It cognizes this is pleasant, it cognizes this is painful, it cognizes this is neither painful nor pleasant. It cognizes, friend. That is why consciousness is said. Now, the word cognize is interesting because most people would say recognize.
Yeah.
But recognize has memory in it, and that takes you one step away from the actual experience of seeing. And that's why we use the word cognize. It's not recognize, it's cognize.
But this verse also takes you into dependent origination to a link.
Well, you'll see.
Okay.
Wisdom and consciousness, friend, are these two states conjoined or disjoined? And is it possible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them? Excellent question. Wisdom and consciousness, friend, these states are conjoined, not disjoined. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them. For what one wisely understands, that one cognizes. What one cognizes, that one wisely understands. That is why these states are conjoined, not disjoined. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the other in order to describe the difference between them. What is the difference, friend, between wisdom and consciousness? These states that are conjoined, not disjoined. The difference, friend, between wisdom and consciousness, these states that are conjoined, not disjoined, is this. Wisdom is to be developed. Consciousness is to be fully understood.
Isn't that similar maybe to that what we name the knowing faculty? It comes out right there in the experience. It's not past. It is at the present moment.
The consciousness is to be fully understood.
Yes. Yeah, but the cognizing, I mean, it's happening.
Well, the cognizing, yes, that would be
The knowing
what's happening in the present moment exactly.
arises.
Yes. But here the question was the difference between wisdom and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And wisdom is to be developed.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Right.
Wisdom is to be developed, seeing the links of dependent origination through the eyes of the Four Noble Truths. Okay? Feeling is said, friend, with reference to what is feeling said, it feels. It feels, friend. That is why feeling is said. What does it feel? It feels pleasure. It feels pain. It feels neither pleasure nor pain. It feels, friend. That is why feeling is said. Perception is said, friend, with reference to what is perception said. It perceives, friend. That is why perception is said. What does it perceive? It perceives blue. It perceives yellow. It perceives red. It perceives white. It perceives, friend. That is why perception is said. Feeling, perception, and consciousness, friend, are these states conjoined or disjoined? And is it possible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them? Feeling, perception, and consciousness, friend, these states are conjoined, not disjoined. It is impossible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them. For what one feels, that one perceives. And what one perceives, that one cognizes. That is why these states are conjoined, not disjoined. And it is impossible to separate each of these states from the others in order to describe the difference between them.
So they are an inseparable unit.
Yes.
I remember somehow, at some point, the description of cognition, I think, is saying or the question about feeling Is that the Vedana you are referring?
Yes.
Yes. That Vedana arises with each consciousness. How does that fit? That's why I have that in my mind sometimes.
That fits with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It arises with
Yeah.
every
And
consciousness.
along with sanya.
With what?
Sanya, perception.
Yeah. Panya?
Sanya.
Sanya, perception. Yeah. But so that was not quite, what I just said is not quite the whole unity. There is consciousness, feeling and perception.
Feeling and perception.
And perception, they are inseparable.
Right.
So when one says, with each consciousness to understand feeling, is arising this feeling, Vedana. But it has to be sanya in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was missing in my mind, apparently. I sometimes contemplate these things and hear myself and also realize the 6 types of consciousness arising, and with it arises Vedana and Sanya.
No,
One needs the other, is that?
Yes.
you perceive the feeling.
Well, yeah, I
The
just
consciousness comes up, you perceive the
I
feeling.
just said, one needs the other.
Yeah.
What is some?
Wahrnehmung.
Perception. Oh.
Nee, in German.
Perception.
That is a very beautiful word, Wahrnehmung. German language sometimes is describing the process.
Ah.
Yeah, for example, we say, what is when the nurse who gives the help for birth, how we call it? No, that's in German. In
Midwife.
English.
Midwife.
Midwife? Yeah.
Midwife.
Midwife. Well, in German we express the process Hebamme. That means heben, lifting it out of the belly.
Ah.
And Amme is now the person.
Oh.
Her activity is prescribed, and that is, you find that in the German language very much. It becomes more clearer to me, more and more appreciated of my language.
Yeah.
Heber, wahrnehmen. Now back to
Okay.
perception. What is perception? There is two, 3 syllables. It doesn't say any. When you say Wahrnehmung, that means you take the truth.
Well, perception is
Wahr. Yes.
perception is the part of the mind that names,
Yeah.
that puts a name on it,
Uh-huh.
and it has some memory with it.
Perception.
Yes.
Well, the German word I was trying to get into, Wahrnehmung, is perception. There are 2 words in it. One is truth, and the other one is taking it in. Taking it,
Taking truth, I can.
or receiving it.
You got color and form, and then you got glass.
So that it
Color
is kind of
taking
more,
the truth. It's a glass, a blue glass.
it's a little process described, it's the activity of perception.
So it sounds like perception would be closer to recognition than cognizing.
But you wouldn't, if you didn't have the cognizing, then the perception would come up, but there would not be any recognition of it.
Uh-huh.
You have to be able to cognize it. You have to be able to see it in the present moment.
And it's consciousness of it.
That's being conscious of it.
Because you can have a feeling, and you might, but there's some type of story that's driving that feeling. You
Yeah,
may
but
not
if
see
you-
the story, but you might have the feeling. Other times you might see the feeling. It's almost like they're so interlinked. You could have a feeling And what drives the feeling are your stories that you might not be you can be conscious of the feeling, but maybe not conscious of the stories that drive that feeling. I don't like that. There's a reason you don't like that, because there's already stories involved in that. You're conscious of the feeling, but maybe not the perception. But other times you can see that the I don't like then feeds into the perception, because sometimes in meditation you can't see the link between the two. You can see feeling, and then you can see your story, but sometimes they seem disjointed. But in some ways, the Buddha is saying they're not disjointed. They're feeding into each other.
No, he's saying those are
No,
separated, because what you're talking about is basically feeling, craving, and clinging, but you're not dividing it up. Your craving and clinging is hooked together, and you're saying story.
Yeah.
See? So you're taking three links and pushing them together. You can't do that. And definitively, feeling, craving, and clinging are separate issues. And when you release them and abandon them, you let go of habitual tendency, then clinging falls away, then craving is the last one to go. But in the line of cognition, it's feeling, craving, clinging, habitual tendency as separate links.
Okay, let's look at it this way. For what one feels, one perceives. So the feeling and the naming of that is there. And what one perceives, that one cognizes.
Is that another one that you're saying now?
No?
The same one?
Same one.
Well, that is his knowing. What
Say
one
that
perceives, one cognizes. That means
What
knowing.
one feels, that one perceives.
Mhm.
And what one perceives, that
Feels.
one cognizes.
Well, isn't this knowing? For me at least. I
So
don't-
you cognize
Yeah.
in the present moment as it comes up. You're able to see it.
Well, it's an immediate knowing. It's not the remembering.
But it's
So
also
that
But
is-
it has memory in it.
It does?
Yeah.
It's a hint that you can see the pieces too.
And then let's go on.
It's understanding. Understanding.
We can split hairs now.
Yeah. Knowable by mind alone. Friend, what can be known by purified mind consciousness, released from the five faculties? Friend, by purified mind consciousness, released from the five faculties, is the base of infinite space, can be known thus. Space is infinite, the base of infinite consciousness can be known thus. Consciousness is infinite, and the base of nothingness can be known thus. There is nothing. Friend, with what does one understand a state that can be known? Friend, one understands a state that can be known with the eye of wisdom. That's the pure eye, the pure consciousness that you call the knowing mind.
Yeah.
That's called the eye of wisdom in the sutta. When you get to when you get to the cessation of perception of feeling, the eye of wisdom actually ceases. It's not there at that time, because there is no perception and there is no feeling that arises. And without that, there is no knowing mind. It's a complete blank, total.
Absolutely.
Friend, what is the purpose of wisdom? The purpose of wisdom, friend, is direct knowledge. Its purpose is full understanding. Its purpose is abandoning.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
You want to hear that again?
Yes.
What is the purpose of wisdom? The purpose of wisdom, friend, is direct knowledge. Its purpose is full understanding. And its purpose is abandoning.
So then these two go together, then.
What two?
Total abandoning and the
The
purpose
full
of
understanding and abandon, yeah.
wisdom. Yeah, they go together.
Yeah. And the purpose of wisdom is direct knowledge. That's direct knowledge of seeing dependent origination. And the full understanding of how dependent origination works. And that leads to the abandoning.
That's crazy.
Right view. Friend, how many conditions are there for the arising of right view? There are two conditions for the arising of right view. The voice of another and wise attention. These are the two conditions for the arising of right view. In other words, the only way you're really going to get right view is from listening to someone who can tell you. And that someone is the Buddha. Friend, how many factors is right view assisted when it has deliverance of mind for its fruit, deliverance of mind for its fruit and benefit? When there is deliverance of mind by wisdom for its fruit, and deliverance by wisdom for its fruit and benefit. Friend, right view is assisted by 5 factors when it has deliverance of mind for its fruit, deliverance of mind for its fruit and benefit. When it has deliverance of mind by wisdom for its fruit, and deliverance by wisdom for its fruit and benefit. Here, friend, right view is assisted by virtue, learning, discussion, serenity, and insight. Okay? Here, friend, right view is assisted by virtue, learning, discussion, serenity, and insight. Serenity and insight is samatha vipassana. Right view is assisted by these 5 factors, has deliverance of mind for its fruit, deliverance of mind for its fruit and benefit. It has deliverance of by wisdom for its fruit, and deliverance by wisdom for its fruit and benefit. Friend, how many kinds of being are there? There are 3 kinds of being, friend. Sense sphere, fine material, and immaterial. Friend, how is renewal of being in the future generated? Friend, renewal of being in the future is generated through the delighting of this and that on the part of being who are hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. How is renewal of being in the future not generated? Friend, with the fading away of ignorance, with the arising of true knowledge, and with the cessation of craving, renewal of being in the future is not generated. So this particular sutta is very interesting. Now we get to the deliverance of mind. How many conditions are there for the attainment of neither painful nor pleasant deliverance of mind? Friend, there are 4 conditions for the attainment of neither painful nor pleasant deliverance of mind. Here, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, a monk enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness, duty, equanimity. These are the four conditions for the attainment of neither pain nor pleasant deliverance of mind. How many conditions are there for the attainment of the signless deliverance of mind? There are 2 conditions for the attainment of the signless deliverance of mind: non-attention to all signs and attention to the signless element. These are the 2 conditions for the attainment of signless deliverance of mind, Nibbana.
Explain that.
I just did.
Oh.
Nibbana. Nibbana. Signless
Oh, okay.
deliverance of mind.
Okay.
Not paying attention to any signs. You could say, instead of Nibbana, you could say the cessation of perception and feeling also.
Okay.
It can be either one of them, really. Friend, how many conditions are there for the persistence of the signless deliverance of mind? Friend, there are 3 conditions for the persistence of the signless deliverance of mind. Non-attention to all signs, attention to the signless element, and the prior determination of its duration. Now this is talking about someone that is an anagami or an arahat. They can make a determination to get into the cessation of perception and feeling, as Dipama did when she said, I'm going to sit for 7 days. She made the determination that she was going to sit for 7 days, and then she did it. And she did it in the cessation of perception and feeling. That is the realm for anagamis and arahats. It doesn't mean that you won't experience a cessation in perception and feeling without being an anagami or an arahat. You will experience it when you when the conditions are right. Let's put it that way. Friend, how many conditions are there for the emergence of the signless deliverance of mind? Friend, there are 2 conditions for the emergence of the signless deliverance of mind: attention to all signs and non-attention to the signless element. Friend, the immeasurable deliverance of mind, the deliverance of mind through nothingness, the deliverance of mind through voidness, and the signless deliverance of mind. Are these states different in meaning and different in name, or are they one in meaning and different in name only? Friend, the immeasurable deliverance of mind, the deliverance of mind through nothingness, the deliverance of mind through voidness, the signless deliverance of mind. There is a way in which these states are different in meaning and different in name, and there is a way in which they are one in meaning and different in name only. What, friend, is the way in which these states are different in meaning and different in name? Here a monk abides pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above, below, and around and everywhere, to all as to oneself. He abides pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, without ill will. He abides pervading 1/4 of the mind with compassion. He pervades 1/4 of the mind imbued with joy. He abides pervading the 1/4 of the mind, 1/4 with a mind imbued with equanimity, likewise the second, third, and fourth. This is called the immeasurable deliverance of mind. So it's the Brahma Viharas. And what, friends, is a deliverance of mind through nothingness? Here with the complete surmounting of the base of infinite space, infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing. A monk enters upon and abides in the base of nothingness. This is called the deliverance of mind through nothingness. And what, friend, is a deliverance of mind through voidness? Here a monk gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or an empty hut reflects thus: this is void of a self, or what belongs to a self. This is the deliverance of mind through voidness. And what is the signless deliverance of mind? Here the non-attention to all signs a monk enters upon and abides in the signless concentration of mind. This is called the signless deliverance of mind. This is the way in which these states are different in meaning and different in name. And what, friends, is the way in which these states are one in meaning and different in name? Lust is a maker of measurement. Hate is a maker of measurement. Delusion is a maker of measurement. In a monk whose taints are destroyed, these are abandoned, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with, done away with so that they no longer are subject to the future arising. Of all the kinds of immeasurable deliverance of mind, the unshakable deliverance of mind is pronounced the best. Now that unshakable deliverance of mind is void of lust, void of hate, and void of delusion. Lust is a something. Hate is a something. Delusion is a something. A monk whose taints are destroyed, these are abandoned by cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with so that they are no longer subject to future arising. Of all the kinds of deliverance of mind through nothingness, the unshakable deliverance of mind is pronounced the best. Now that unshakable deliverance of mind is void of lust, void of hate, and void of delusion. Lust is a maker of signs. Hate is a maker of signs. Delusion is a maker of signs. In a monk whose taints are destroyed, these are abandoned, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, done away with, so that they are no longer subject to future arising. All these kinds of signless deliverance of mind, the unshakable deliverance of mind, is pronounced the best. Now that unshakable deliverance of mind is void of lust, void of hate, void of delusion. This is the way in which these states are one in meaning and different in name only. That is what the Venerable Sāriputta said. The Venerable Mahā Koṭṭhita was satisfied and delighted in Sāriputta's words. So, what they're basically talking about with all these different kinds of mental states is when you are in them, they are void of lust, void of hate, and void of delusion. And I suppose you could even say all the way down into the first jhana that they can be that way. Okay? So does anybody have any question? Please.
I missed the last part.
The immeasurable deliverance of mind, the deliverance of mind through nothingness, the deliverance of mind through voidness, and the signless deliverance of mind are these states different in meaning and different in name, or are they one in meaning and different in name only? The immeasurable deliverance of mind, the deliverance of mind through nothingness, the deliverance of mind through voidness, and the signless deliverance of mind. There is a way in which these states are different in meaning and different in name, and there is a way in which they are one in meaning and different in name only. And it goes through this, and it basically comes out the way that they are one in meaning and different in name only is because they let go of the lust, hatred, and delusion. And when they're different in meaning and different in name, that they're talking about the immeasurable as being the Brahma Viharas, and the nothingness as being the realm of nothingness in the jhanas. And what's the other one?
Voidness.
The voidness is being void of a personal self. And the signless deliverance of mind is the cessation of perception and feeling. Okay? Okay. So, please continue. Don't be overly shocked or upset when the hindrances arise. At this stage, they can be very persistent and very loud, and can be very painful. As you 6R these, and relax into them, knowing that this is just your mind helping you develop your mindfulness more deeply. And it's helping you to be able to see more clearly. Then you'll lose the aversion towards the hindrance. And you'll start to see it more and more as a friend that is there to help. Now remember, on the night of that the Buddha attained enlightenment, he had some real wacko, heavy-duty hindrances coming up. And he had to deal with those before he could go into the deeper states of meditation. So it's real important to not get overly involved in the thinking about or trying to control. just seeing that as they truly are, and allowing the space for these hindrances to come, and keeping your sense of humor with it. It will help your meditation. Okay? So let's share some merit then. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty powers, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation.